He is good. He knows his plans because he planted them in his paradise. Now his paradise is a place of rest. This is the completion in the Father's thought, and these are the words of his meditation. Each of his words is the work of his one will in the revelation of his word. So let's start right here. The revelation of his word. Now, again, this has to do with the fact that his word is obviously revealed to us. That means there's something inside that's beyond just consonants, that's beyond just vowels, the kinds of things that people argue about. There's something over and above that. There is a revelation to his word, the understanding that comes from understanding his word as being something that is in progress up into a point of completion. And that completion is when we understand the fullness, if you will, of his word. The revelation, in fact, kind of is the fullness. That is to say, the understanding that there was always going to be a threefold revelation. Just with that one insight, allows you to see His Word in His fullness, and you can see that it took all those 6,000 years to come to completion from the time of Adam until the time of the revelation of the elect of his thought. That is to say, the Father is that which plants, if you will, the seeds, if you will, in his word, as well as in time. We are, the elect who are to come, are his planting, and we are planted in his paradise, which is to say, his place of rest. That is to say, you're not looking around anymore. You are at rest. You've come to the conclusion that, yes, of course, this is it. That you have the complete thought now that everything was meant to be in three stages. The revelation of the Father, and the revelation of the Son, and of course the Son gave revelation. Everything that is in prospect is essentially a seed, essentially a plant. And everything that you understand in retrospect is essentially the fruit, because after everything comes to completion, which of course inherent in that idea is that it takes time for the Father's thought, if you will, to come about by means of the words of his meditation, which is to say the complete fullness of the work. Um, and so everyone who exists now was destined to exist. Everything that has happened was destined to happen. Everything takes place within his forethought, and everything goes exactly the way he plans it to go. It is according to his meditation. Now, before this, when they were still in the depths of his thought, the Word, which was the first to come out, revealed them along with a mind that speaks the one word in a silent grace. Now, again, this is with reference to that second generation. When they speak of the Word, and again, it's the convention in English to capitalize it. That, of course, is Jesus. When they were still in the depths of thought, the Word, which is the first to come out, that is to say, the first of two, the Father fathers the Son, which he calls the Word, and then he fathers again the elect, which are to come. Now, there were elect that were in his day. These were the ones who explained how the Word, or how Jesus, in other words, was spoken of as being the Messiah, as coming second in line. And they were there to bear witness not only to him, not only to it, but also to the children who are to come, which is to say that third generation. So they served a function. And he revealed them along with a mind that speaks the one word in a silent grace. That is to say, it's all a unity, it's all one word. Think of the ways in which you just go in and out of these apocryphal books, and they're so interchangeable with the canonicals. So the extra canonicals and the canonicals both speak as one. And this happens in what is kind of referred to here as a silent grace. That is to say, it just sort of happens of itself, and it reveals itself in time. In other words, it just sort of is. He was called the thought since they were in it before being revealed. Again, so he calls the end from the beginning. He calls the generations before they arrive, in other words. Again, just the mere fact that he's speaking in terms of threes: Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the three dispensations, the tables of the law, Aaron's rod, all that, it just tracks all the way up and down. There were going to be three revelations, so he basically called it in his thought from the beginning, because the threefold revelation is from the beginning. Um, the Noah's Ark had three levels on it. It just goes on and on and on. You see the threes over and over again. It happened then that he was the first to come out at the time when it pleased the one who wanted it. Again, that was strategic. Again, he was the fulfillment of prophecy in that he was essentially the son of the Old Testament, if you will, the secondary installment, if you will, of the threefold revelation. And then he spoke again of further revelation. He spoke of the hidden manna. He spoke of things to come, the Holy Spirit to come, the Comforter, to comfort us and to give us, if you will, that rest, so that we can dwell in the paradise of the Father, which is to say, basically, in the Father, um, since we understand the Father's thought. That he was the first to come out at a time when it pleased the one who wanted it. Now the Father rests in his will and is pleased with it. In other words, he's satisfied now to rest in the fact that all of the pieces are in place. And all that really needs to happen is the unfolding of time. He's rested his case. Maybe he's essentially spoken everything beforehand. Again, because this is a restoration of scriptures that were written thousands of years ago. Um, so, in other words, the pieces were there, everything was fixed, and it just was awaiting the timing, if you will, of the Father to reveal it. And so, again, it goes on. Nothing happens without Him, nor does anything happen without the will of the Father. But His will is incomprehensible. Again, you don't see it coming, and you can't really quite understand where He's coming from because His thought is so outside of what you expected and the paradigms that you've been shown, that you're totally thinking along completely other lines, and you really don't see it coming. His trace is the will. In other words, you can trace his will um, throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament, and throughout the apocryphal scriptures. The evidence is there. And no one can know him, nor does he exist for people to scrutinize so that they might grasp him. Again, nobody really sees this coming. It plays out and is revealed at the end. But when he wills, what he wills is this: even if the sight doesn't please them in any way before God, the will of the Father, because he knows the beginning of all of them and their end. For in the end, he'll greet them directly. Well, to say that he knows everything beforehand is kind of not just a belief anymore. It's a revelation, because when you see that what he's actually said will happen. Um, Again, it would have been impossible for Valentinus to have predicted this without knowing it. He had to have known what the unfolding would be to have written about it so exquisitely. He knows that there are things that are going to happen that people will not understand, that he understands it. But again, he was among those um, to whom the thought was revealed back in the time of the second revelation, predicting, of course, the third revelation to come. And, again, Valentinus does this with such a level of just a commanding, sort of straightforward, truthful, if you will, statement, just speaking it line by line, word by word, explaining everything just down to the excruciating detail. Um, so he knows him, he understands him, and he's laid it down for us to pick up on. Again, he knows everything from beginning to end. Um, it's funny because people, I think, they're unable to grasp the idea of being outside of space and time. I've often used a kind of an example of something that maybe you could understand. Like, for example, when you read a book, maybe in your head you see time passing, you see events or whatever, but the words are already written there. And so when you get to the end, you're not really at the end, so to speak. You're just at those words that are on that page, which theoretically, if you were outside of time, you could see all of time. Just like in a book, if you just flipped over to the end just to see how it ended, for example, and it played out just exactly so, if you were at the time of the end, understanding that you have received the end directly, that you have received the fullness of the teaching, when you know in your gut that what you have is what everybody prophesied of, and it goes out of it goes out of its way to explain to you that you can rest in this, that you can understand just exactly where you are, that you are in his paradise because you have come to a place of rest where you just know that this is the truth and that nothing happens without him. Now, the end, just in case that wasn't enough, the end is receiving knowledge of the one who is hidden. This is the Father from whom the beginning has come and to whom all have come. Out from him. Wait, okay, sorry. From whom the beginning has come, and to whom all who've come out from him will return. In other words, everybody will receive a return to the Father, which is to say, the one who is hidden. In other words, the hidden mysteries are again, it's like prophecies and codes and messages and images and patterns, and there are things that are there that are in place that speak of future things. The higher things couch themselves in the lower things. Physical things, you can replace one eye with another eye. That is to say, you think of a man's physical eyes being healed, that's over here. But on the right hand, it's the idea that the spiritual eye is being healed. And that's for all of us, not just that one singular person that's healed, but for all of us. Now it says they were revealed for the glory and the joy of his name. And as we'll find out, the name, if you will, of the Father is the Son. That is to say that he himself became flesh. And so his name is sort of by default the Son's name. But the idea also, when the Son agrees with him, saying that I and the Father are one, he also says that, the Father worketh hitherto and I work. The claim, of course, that God was his Father was leveled against him. The idea is that what the Father does, the Son does also. So in the same way, and we'll get into that, but in the same way that the Father sows the seeds, if you will, plants everything in prospect, puts everything into terms of images and codes and etc. for us to decode and to understand in time. It's the same thing that the Son does. And so that's kind of the function of the Son, if you will, to be both flesh and spirit, in the same way that his words are both fleshly and spiritual in nature. They are fleshly to the fleshly and to those who are in the middle, those who've been lied to, those who've been confused, deliberately, of course, those who have been exploited, of course. And his revelation, that is to say, the end, which is to say the receiving of knowledge of the one who is hidden, that's the thing that frees us, that we know the truth and the truth makes us free. This exists both within the Father and the Son, that is to say the Old Testament and the New Testament.